All right, let's dive right into this. We're talking about the incredible inside story of Project Mario, the secret, super high-stakes battle inside Google over the future of AI itself. And, it turned out to be a failed experiment, but one that would literally change the course of AI safety forever. So let's kick things off with this bombshell of a quote, really, because it gets right to the heart of the mystery here. How on earth did two of AI's biggest idealists, guys who spent years fighting for safeguards and oversight, how did they completely lose faith in the very systems they were trying to build? It's a huge question, and to get the answer, we've got to go back to the very beginning. Okay, so here's our roadmap for this whole story. We're going to start with that first quest for control, which sparked this kind of brilliant plan called Project Mario. Then we'll get into the grueling negotiations with Google and a surprisingly similar fight happening at a major rival. All of this leads to a huge breaking point and, well, a pretty sobering lesson about where real power lies. So where does a story like this even begin? Well, it all starts with the spectacular failure of the very first real attempt to govern superintelligence. Picture this. It's August 2015. You've got the biggest names in tech. We're talking Elon Musk, Google's Larry Page, all gathered at SpaceX. The goal? To create the first ever AGI safety board for DeepMind. I mean, this should have been a landmark moment, right? Instead, it just completely imploded. You had clashing egos, totally different visions, and the whole thing just fell apart. But the real kicker? A super frustrated Elon Musk storms off, takes everything he just learned, and goes on to create OpenAI, kicking off one of the biggest rivalries in tech history. Just like that. So yeah, that first shot at oversight was a total disaster. But out of those ashes, DeepMind's co-founder, Mustafa Suleyman, he got obsessed with this new, much grander vision. He was determined to create some kind of new structure, something that could actually balance profit, safety, and the public good. And that mission, that obsession, brings us to Project Mario. This was it. This was what seemed like the perfect solution, a secret plan designed to give DeepMind the independence it so desperately craved. And this opportunity? It kind of came out of nowhere, thanks to a massive corporate shakeup at Google. When Google blew itself up and reorganized into this new holding company called Alphabet, it created this whole new category for semi-independent companies. They called them bets. And just like that, a door opened, a pathway for DeepMind to potentially spin out and finally take back control of its own destiny. So the heart of this whole plan, the centerpiece, was something called the 333 board. And it was actually a really elegant idea. You'd have 3 directors from DeepMind, 3 from the parent company Alphabet, and then 3 totally independent outsiders. The thinking was this structure would guarantee that the world's most powerful AI wouldn't just be driven by corporate profits. I mean, this was the dream. This was what they were fighting for. But, having the dream is one thing. Convincing a corporate giant like Google to go along with it, that's a whole different ballgame. And so began a years-long and, frankly, soul-crushing negotiation. And this really gets to the core of the problem, right? You can see the fundamental conflict right here. DeepMind saw itself as this independent research lab. Their mission, safely build AGI. But Google, well, they were starting to see DeepMind less as a moonshot and more as a crucial strategic asset, something absolutely essential to their future business. I mean, these two visions were just on a collision course. There's no other way to put it. And for a little while, things actually looked pretty promising. By the summer of 2016, they had a formal agreement hammered out, and it even had the backing of Google's co-founder, Larry Page. But then, the rug just got completely pulled out from under them. All of a sudden, lawyers started raising these vague concerns. And then the new Google CEO, Sundar Pichai, he just laid his cards on the table. He flat out told them, AI is now central to Google's entire strategy. And with that, the spin-out plan was in serious, serious jeopardy. So what do you do then? What did Hassabis and Suleyman do? Well, they came up with one of the most audacious backup plans in corporate history. Seriously. The idea was, if Google wouldn't play ball, they would just go out, raise $5 billion from other investors, walk away, and restart DeepMind as a special kind of nonprofit, one totally shielded from shareholder pressure. And the craziest part? They actually got a commitment for the first billion from LinkedIn's co-founder, Reid Hoffman. And Hoffman's reason for this, his quote, just perfectly illustrates how high the stakes were. This shows it wasn't just some internal squabble at Google. You had major players in Silicon Valley who truly believed that a technology this powerful absolutely should not be controlled by a single corporate monopoly. The pressure was definitely on. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. DeepMind wasn't alone in this fight. At the exact same time they were battling Google, their biggest rival, OpenAI was having its own internal meltdown over almost the exact same issues. It turns out this existential struggle for control, it wasn't just them. It was becoming an industry-wide crisis. And it created this fascinating mirror image problem. Think about it. You had DeepMind, a for-profit company trying to bolt on nonprofit safety rules. And then you had OpenAI, a nonprofit that desperately needed a for-profit arm just to raise the insane amounts of cash needed for AGI research. Both of them were trying to invent this new kind of hybrid company that had never really existed before. And trust me, over at OpenAI, things got ugly. You had leaders like Elon Musk and Sam Altman basically scheming against each other for power. Musk even tried to get OpenAI absorbed into Tesla. The whole thing came to a head when Musk got into a shouting match with an intern at an all-hands meeting, apparently called him a jackass, and then just stormed out for good. Wild stuff. Okay, so all of that chaos brings us back to DeepMind, where years and years of these tough negotiations were about to hit their own tragic and very personal breaking point. The final collapse didn't happen all at once. It was more like death by 1,000 cuts. First, in June of 2017, Suleyman prematurely announces this complex new deal to his entire staff, only for Google to send it back just 10 days later, covered in red ink. A total humiliation for the founders. But the final nail in the coffin came in April 2018. A key executive who, essential to the new proposed structure, got poached by Apple. And that just blew up the whole plan for good. Project Mario was officially dead. And the personal toll of this failure was just immense, especially for Mustafa Suleyman. One of his colleagues used this really strange metaphor to describe him after it all fell apart, saying he was wearing no clothes up the cloud in a banana. It's a weird image, but it paints a picture of a guy left totally exposed and adrift after his life's work just evaporated. And this failure, it really started to crack the foundation of the partnership between him and Demis Hassabis. And all this struggle leads us to the final and kind of paradoxical lesson that was learned from the ashes of this huge multi-year battle. And here it is. This is a pretty stunning admission from Demis Hassabis himself. After all those years fighting for boards and charters and rules, he basically concluded it was all useless. He came to believe that when a real crisis hit, when the chips were really down, no formal structure, no committee would actually be able to make the tough, correct decision. And that brings us right back to where we started, full circle. The idealists were gone, and they'd been replaced by hardened realists. With their faith in systems and governance completely shattered, both Hassabis and Suleyman, who are now actually rivals at Google and Microsoft, they independently came to the exact same conclusion. The only reliable path to AI safety wasn't through rules. It was through their own personal influence and power, right at the very top of these massive companies. So at the end of all this, we're left with a really unsettling question. I mean, after seeing these massive, years-long efforts to build guardrails fail so spectacularly, you have to ask yourself, in this high-stakes race for superintelligence, is our best hope for safety not a system we can design, but just a person, the personal values of the very few individuals who hold all the keys?